Before we begin, let me tell you what you can expect by the end of this story. You'll not only learn who Yukio Araki was, the youngest kamikaze pilot in history, but you'll also gain a deeper understanding of what pushed a 17-year-old boy toward a mission he knew he would never return from. And maybe, by the end, you'll find yourself questioning how war shapes the minds and hearts of the very young. Let's start. Yukio Araki was born in 1928 in Gunma, Japan. At first glance, he was just like any other teenager of his time, quiet, emotional, and deeply attached to his family. He loved playing with his siblings, enjoyed reading, and had a gentle, almost fragile personality. No one who knew him as a child could have imagined the tragic path his life would take. But Japan in the 1930s and 40s was a place where childhood didn't last very long. The rising tide of nationalism shaped young people from their earliest days. Schools taught students that dying for the emperor was the highest honor a person could achieve, and while adults could question things silently, children, especially teenagers, often absorbed these ideas without challenge. When Yukio was just 15, he joined the youth pilot training program, partly out of admiration for pilots, but also because it was one of the few ways young boys felt they could serve their country. To him, it probably felt like an adventure at first, something exciting and noble. But as the war turned against Japan, things changed rapidly. By 1944, Japan was running out of experienced pilots, aircraft, and even fuel, and the leadership became desperate. That desperation gave birth to a deadly new tactic, the kamikaze units. Missions where pilots didn't come back, missions designed with one purpose, crashing directly into enemy ships. Yukio Araki, still only 16, was pulled into this world before he even understood the full weight of it. His letters from this time tell us far more about the boy he still was, rather than the soldier he was told to be. In one of his last letters to his parents, he apologized, not for dying, but for the trouble he felt he had caused them throughout his life. He wrote that he hoped Japan would win the war and that his sacrifice would mean something. But behind those words, you can feel the fear, a kind of trembling honesty that no propaganda can hide. On May 26, 1945, at just 17 years old, Yukio climbed into his plane, a small, fragile aircraft loaded with explosives. Before taking off, he posed for a photograph, holding a puppy. The image is famous today. People look at it and see the truth. He wasn't a fanatic. He wasn't a monster. He was a child forced into an impossible role. His target that day was an American ship near Okinawa. Like many kamikaze missions, the details of his final moments are unclear. Some reports say he hit his target. Others say he was shot down before reaching it. What we know for certain is that Yukio Araki never returned. His life ended before he ever truly had a chance to begin. When we look back, it's easy to think in terms of numbers, strategy, battles, victories, and losses. But stories like Yukio's remind us that behind every statistic was a human being, someone with hopes, fears, dreams, and a family waiting at home. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Yukio's story is this: he genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. Not because he wanted to die, but because he had been taught from childhood that this was what honor looked like, that this was the price of loyalty. Today, when historians talk about Yukio Araki, they don't speak of him as a hero or a villain. They speak of him as a symbol of the cost of war, the terrible price paid by the young, the vulnerable, and the impressionable. His story forces us to question how societies can shape young minds, how propaganda can blur the line between choice and obedience, and how war takes from us the people who have barely begun to imagine their future. So, when you remember Yukio Araki, remember him not as a weapon, not as a pilot, but as a teenager who should have had his whole life ahead of him. A teenager who held a puppy before boarding a plane he knew he would never leave. A teenager who wrote his family a goodbye letter with handwriting that still looked like a child's. And maybe, just maybe, his story can help us understand why peace is worth protecting.